to offer that can help resolve those challenges. So this session is about waste and recycling, and I think that's great because that's sort of my favorite topic. That's the topic I've been working with for most of my professional life. I mean, everybody who was in the previous session has already heard a little bit about myself, but I tend to repeat some of this for everybody who has joined now, so you know why I'm here and what I do. So my name is Henrik Siepermeier, and I am very close to being done with my PhD. It's just a few final pages that need to be written, and then just a small defense coming up. So I have the last 4 years researched waste behaviors of households in Sweden mostly, and how to influence waste sorting and waste practices in households in the real world. So my research is very real world relevant and applied in that sense, but it also is focused on advancing science by helping us to test our theories in the field and gain understanding from actual experience with real humans. Because we tend to do a lot of things in labs and with university students, and I don't think that's a very wise choice. I think it should be with actual people who make actual decisions. And if that happens to be university students, that's great. But for me, for the last 4 years, there was a couple of thousand households in Sweden, which we used a couple of behavioral interventions to increase their recycling and the sorting of waste. And before that, my background is in sustainability and a lot on sustainable waste management. So my entire studies have been focused on waste as the application area, and a lot on psychology and behavior economics as the focus. So how do we work as humans? How do we make decisions? And how can we use that knowledge to help humans make more sustainable choices and behave more sustainably? And as I said, I like to do that in the field. So here's a couple of pictures that some of you have seen before. It's from different projects that I was involved in. On the left-hand side, this is me together with a couple of colleagues sorting 1.8 tons of university trash in a trash audit that we did in our free time, because there is a group of people who does things like that in their free time. To see what were common misthrows, to get an understanding of the current quality of sorting, and then make targeted interventions. And on the top middle, you see me standing in front of a lot of event trash from a similar intervention that was connected to this bin setup that we'll talk about a little more in a minute. And then this is me looking up from an underground waste disposal system. That is what I've been working with for the last 4 years, which uses vacuum pressure or vacuum suction to suck away trash. And because of how the system is designed, there was different data available for us, so we could implement interventions and actually measure if households change their behavior. And then finally, my other connection to waste, it's not just on the end of the pipe, sort of, but it's also at the beginning, is a company that I founded in Germany, which essentially works with regular supermarket chains and to the 2 largest chains in Germany, and implements a product selection of products that are without individual packaging, so you can buy them in bulk, and they all come from sustainable production, as local as possible, as organic as possible, but they are where you are anyways, so that you don't have to go to a separate store, you don't have to do separate driving, and you don't have to change your behavior in any meaningful way to implement this into your everyday life. So all of this just to show that I really like trash. I think it's super interesting, and I have a lot of experience in playing around with trash. And the idea today is that I share a little bit of the insights that we have into how to change behaviors, and give you some practical strategies and aspects to look at when it comes to waste management and recycling in university or other public contexts. It's a little bit broader than that, but a lot of this is directly connected to university processes. And to start, we need to understand behaviors, right? If we want to change them, we need to understand how they work. So here's a little bit of an introduction to who we are and how we make decisions as humans. This is a fun little picture. It describes a little bit the current way how we behave. We come from somewhere, and then we pollute where we came from. So that's not going too well. But it's interesting because it connects quite closely to this picture. And this may look familiar, because it describes who we still are on the inside in our brains. We're very much still stone aged, sort of, when it comes to how we think and how our thinking works. What that means is that our brain is evolutionarily programmed to save energy, to look at short-term wins, and to look at what others do, because this is what ensured our survival. We talked a lot about the last element, what do others do, earlier, but the other two interact with it. But they are relevant, and they're relevant in the waste context, but just to give you one look of sort of what's relevant to have in mind when we talk about humans. So let's put this into the evolutionary context. When you don't quite know if you're going to have food tomorrow, and if you're going to have food in a year, and how your life is going to be like in a year, then it makes perfect sense to look at short-term wins and have a short-term focus and not be interested in what's happening in 10 years. When you don't know if you will be eaten tomorrow, then it makes a lot of sense to focus on the now, and also makes a lot of sense to ensure that you're not kicked out of your group, because then for sure you will be eaten. And to stay part of your group, it makes sense to think about how do the others behave? Is that similar to me? How can I ensure that I behave in a similar fashion to the others and not different from them? This is a little bit about the why does that work this way. And there's great work from somebody from your country, Daniel Kahneman, who I'm sure all of you are familiar with, at least by name, who distinguishes the way how we humans think and act into two categories, into two systems, system one and system two. System one is our fast system, that allows us to make fast everyday decisions, to do multiple things in parallel, to almost work automatically. That's essentially what we use when we drive a car, or the system we use when in the morning we decide to brush our teeth and then take a shower. If we were to think through all of these decisions every day from the beginning, then all of our energy would be lost, right? So that's our system one. We like to use this as much as possible as humans. System two is the system that allows us to be where we are today, because it allows us to make complex decisions, to really think through processes that demand high effort, that are sequential in thinking, and they're slower. But they demand a lot of energy, and they take forever, and they're a pain in the butt to do sometimes. So we try to avoid these as much as possible, because again, from an evolutionary perspective, makes perfect sense to save that energy. What that means is that, sort of roughly speaking, 95% of the time we like to use system one for almost everything we do. If it's system one, automatic, wonderful, because it saves energy. System two, really only when we have to. How does that translate to our behaviors in every day? Well, this is who we are, right? Like, we avoid extra energy loss at all costs. We like to take shortcuts wherever possible. Anybody who is, if you're operational managers or logistical managers and you're in campus management, this is reality for you, right? This is how humans behave. So they like to avoid any additional effort. Doesn't mean we can't show that effort. We're all able to write a shopping list when we go shopping and be very determined. This is what I need. This is what I'm going to do with it. So that's what I'll buy. But then sometimes, the energy cravings are with us. And if we are hungry and you go with your shopping list, you can be sure that there will be some kind of sweet or some other stuff that you don't want to buy that will still end up in your shopping basket, because that's just who we are. For the same reason, because that's just who we are as humans, that this is an optical illusion, that these tables do not look like the same size, but you cannot see it. And even when I show you that they are exactly of the same size, it is still very difficult to believe that this is true. It's like, what? How does this just become a larger table? That's impossible. So it's just, our brain just, it's not perfect. It's pretty good, but there's some things we just can't do. We can't stop that. And I'll show an example again, because I'm sure there's some people who haven't been in our morning session that showcases the influence of others on our own example. And I'm sure everybody who has been in the morning session will find it amusing to look at that once more. So here's an example of the influence of others' behavior on our own behavior.
The gentleman in the elevator now is a candid star. These folks who are entering, the man with the white shirt, the lady with the trench coat, and subsequently one other member of our staff, will face the rear. And you'll see how this man in the trench coat tries to maintain his individuality, but little by little, He looks at his watch, but he's really making an excuse for turning just a little bit more to the wall. Now we'll try it once again. Here's the candid subject. Here comes the candid camera staff, 3 of them at least. And this man has apparently been in groups before.
Okay, you get the idea. It is hilarious. I mean, there's absolutely no reason to turn around, and yet we do it because others do it, and it seems to be the thing to do. I mean, especially the first man who just couldn't really believe it. It was, you know, he was on the edge, right? Do I turn around or not? But he still did it. That's how powerful the behavior of others is, and how that impacts our behavior. So we need to understand this. I mean, there's another example here. We used this morning. You come to a new train station, you've never been there, you want to find the exit. What do? You just follow the crowd. It's the easiest way to get to the main building or to the main exit, and it saves you energy, and that's why social norms have a value that they provide for us. This is all the repetition or connection to this morning that we've had today. Now we've learned a little bit how do we work, right? What do our brains do, and how do we work as humans? Now we want to focus on how to change behaviors and the practical strategies. So what we need to do to change behaviors is we need to take this knowledge and not ignore it, but put it into practice. What we do right now in most cases is we know this is the case and we completely ignore it whenever we design most things around us. Or we either ignore it on purpose, or we just forget about it and don't pay attention to it, and then these elements will steer our behavior. So instead of ignoring these shortcomings or maybe specific decision-making processes, the idea is to include those. And that in most cases you can do by making it easy to do the right thing. That's like that. If that's your general strategy, I mean, that's, you know, sort of self-explanatory, but that is a great way how you can ensure that we save energy. It's, you know, it's a fun thing for us to do because it feels great because it was an easy solution. And it's also a great way to ensure that the social norm and what I observe around me, how others are behaving, is what I'm expecting because it was so easy to do this thing, right? So how can we ensure that? What does that mean for waste? I have brought with me a bunch of photos and examples from my very particular hobby of photographing poor waste setups. So wherever I am and I find a particularly poor, particularly good example of a waste bin setup and a solution for sorting and infrastructure, I take a picture. So I thought the best thing to show you how to do things is to walk through a couple of examples, discuss what is good or bad, and to give you the overarching strategies and suggestions that I have for how you should go about with this. So on the overarching level, what we'll look at is visibility of waste sorting solutions and waste systems, the location of waste bins, the process of how to install and adapt these systems, the resources you might want to use, and the answer to the question, why waste? Because that's important for you to keep in mind to be able to go out there and get cracking, sort of. And the context of this is all of this is adapted to what can I do to implement better waste and recycling solutions in universities and to change student behavior, and what do these optimal solutions look like? And then later on we have plenty of time for discussion. All right, let's talk through each of these elements individually and through a couple of contents, and then I'll show you examples for it. All right, visibility. Ideally, you make waste bins stand out, okay? You want that people see what to do with their waste and where to go. You do not want them to blend in. I know this is what we see in most circumstances. It's often when cities are designed and stuff, it's about, oh God, but the waste, and nobody wants to see the waste, right? Nobody wants to deal with waste. So we hide it in a nicely, chrome colored bin in front of a chrome colored building, which is impossible to see, and it disappears. I can see that from an architectural and design perspective, but from a behavior perspective, that's terrible because it makes it very difficult to even just find the place for your trash in the first place. So you want to make it stand out, and we'll get to some examples. You want to make sure that if you have several fractions and types of waste that you distinguish, that they are clearly distinguishable. So they can be color coded if possible, right? Different colors for different types. You can have different sizes for bins to suggest, oh, these are different. They are different sizes. There must be a difference between them. And you could also use the size to indicate this is probably a lot of your trash and this is probably a little of your trash. You can work, or you have to ensure that the bags that you have in these bins, they sort of coordinate or cooperate sort of with your design of the bins and the color choice. Again, all of this will become very visible in a minute. And you need clear signage, right? That is adapted to the local context. So it makes very clear what here do I do with this type of waste, which I know happens or I have often in this specific instance. Let's look at what I mean. And we'll start with some very poor examples. This is an example of a waste bin design that I spotted a couple of years ago in New York City. These are supposed to be different fractions of waste bins. It says very small here, trash only, I don't even know what that says, paper. That is only written, it's written in one language. There's no symbols here. They all look exactly the same. They have the same liner inside. And they are extremely difficult to see in the environment, as you can see from this short clip. So this is the bins. I mean, they blend in well, wonderful. Okay, that's great architecture. I don't even see them. Yeah, but that's the problem. You don't even see them. And you can see they look sort of like the other pillars that we have around here. That's a very poor design. Another example, very recently established in the university in Stockholm that I work at part of the time. These are different types of waste. Oh, you didn't see that? Oh, I'm sorry, was that not clear immediately? Let us look in more detail. I mean, you have very small plaques here. This says PUN, so this is a deposit refund scheme, plastic, and then God knows what these say. Again, it's written, so it's only accessible for people who can read, and read Swedish for that matter, although it's a very international university. They all have exactly the same shape, same color, and it's completely unclear. And if you look in detail, you can see that the one for bottle deposit and for plastic, they end up in the same trash bin. So I have two inlets and they end up in the trash bin. Like that is, this is one way to undermine that anybody will care at all about the sorting. And it is a wonder that in 2024, this is still implemented. But this is a very real example. It's not even 3 months old, I think. Let's look at a couple of other examples where we see some of the previous elements integrated a little better. Okay, different example. We walk through them one by one. What do we see here? We have a bunch of different bins, different colors, different sizes. All right, so they included a couple of the elements, but it's very busy. I mean, I can clearly see, yes, these are different fractions, but where do I start? I just want to get rid of my trash. What do I do here? Where does this go? It's a little unclear what is each of these fractions, what does it stand for? And in most cases, you want to make sure that the mixed waste fraction is the one that's easiest to use and most accessible, because you can always live with more mixed trash as long as the quality of the recycled fractions is good, right? You don't want people to throw something into a recycling fraction which is wrong there, because it will contaminate the rest. So with this focus, make sure that if somebody doesn't pay any attention and they just go out there and they throw it in the least worst bin, which in this case doesn't work because the biggest bin is paper, this one is plastics, and this is the mixed waste. So that doesn't make any sense. Why is it the second tallest one? I mean, I guess they want to suggest that most people have a lot of paper in airports. I don't know. This is an airport somewhere in I think in Düsseldorf. So the color coding, okay. Implementation, well, we can work on that. Let's look at another one, another airport. This is Istanbul. I like the color coding, right? From a distance, okay, I can see there's different colors. It's a little difficult for non-Turkish speakers to see what these colors mean or stand for, but I'll give them that. But then we look at the top and suddenly I can't distinguish the fractions anymore because all of them warn me to not throw my mask or my gloves in there. This was during COVID times. And they also say here, I have to find another gray bin for my mask and my COVID gloves. That's not going to happen. If you want people to throw something into a specific fraction, you can't tell them not here, but not tell them where exactly that is. The other bin should have been next to it, or it should have been clearer. Nice idea, execution a little poor. And when you look from the top, it's impossible to distinguish between the different fractions. I can, there's a bunch of examples here I have. So from all around the world, this is a bus station in Stockholm, the central bus terminal. Nicely colored bins. They're all at the same spot, so at least I can distinguish. The colors have nothing to do with the other colors used in Sweden for these fractions. They're only here for whatever reason. They decided to use different fractions, different colors. And why does one of them have a bin and why a lid? And why is this lid on the mixed bin? So now what will happen is nobody wants to touch a waste lid unless they absolutely have to. And if I have to get rid of something on the go, I will definitely throw it into either paper or plastic, but not into the mixed one. So this lid is on the completely wrong bin. They could have put the 2 lids on these bins. That would have been at least somewhat in line with what I want people to do in the worst case. But again, it's not quite thought out. You see how these elements are coming together? We have another example, which is sort of okay. This is in Aarhus in Denmark. We have pictograms. Okay, they make sort of clear what goes into which fractions. We also have the words here. It's a little unclear, are these different containers behind, or is this one container? Is there really a differentiation? That's not so well solved. If somebody goes there, will I question if they really distribute this and really separate the organics from the residual waste or not? So they could have done that a little better, but overall quite good. Also, it worked quite well. I looked in there. And then we have an example, which is, I get the idea, but why do you have waste bins which all say rubbish, and then you have different fractions at the bottom? Is it rubbish or is it this fraction symbol? It is unclear. You invest a lot of money into these bins, but now they're completely useless because you use them for other fractions. So I don't know, not great. Let's look at some examples from other contexts, stuff that I did, because of course also I do this wrong. We worked with households and their own bin situation at home. This is what it looked like before, very overfilled. They didn't have enough bins. It was the first problem, right? If they only have 2 big bins, what are they going to sort? So they went and used some other bags that they had lying around, or even just put glass bottles like loosely in their cupboard. Not a great solution. So we equipped them with bins. But now you, with your trained eyes, you already see, oh my God, but why are the colored bags in these different fractions, and why are they all of the same color? If you just want to use the same bag for all fractions, then why make it such a distinguishable yellow color, which usually has a meaning here? Then it should have been black. Okay, so something we did wrong. I realize not in every context you may be able to change all bins and all the setups, and you might have to deal with just what is, but then you can think about other changes to the infrastructure. So in this example, these bins more or less all have the same color. These back here, some of them are not blue in the lid, but some are, although they're different types of bins. So blue here means paper, but back here it might mean mixed waste. So we can change that. What do? We can change the color of the wall behind it to still signal these are different areas of the room, different fractions. So just to give you an idea of how could you deal with such issues in a different way. By the way, I'm realizing that technically it's only 5 minutes left, but since we're skipping a little bit of local best practice and we'll just make this more open for discussion, I'll just extend a bit if that's fine, because then we can walk through all of my other trash collection here. All right, some final ones before we get to the next point. Pretty good example, right? This is at a hotel buffet. I have some type of mixed waste, which says here mixed waste, and then I have an apple, which is to symbolize organic waste. I think that's quite well done, because up here, at least I can distinguish these fractions. But when I look closely, they are actually separate containers, but they have the same green liner, which in Scandinavia is known as a biodegradable bag. So that's only used for organic waste usually. So why is that in the residual waste? Now I'm confused again. I'm getting different messages from this bin. Do I throw left? Do I throw right? Is there a difference? It's very small, but these are the things that matter for people in an instant to be able to go through and automatically make the right decision. Because now I already get kicked out of my automatic mood and I'm like, oh no, what is this now? And then we have 2 pretty good solutions, I think. This is one at Copenhagen train station. They use the universal standard Nordic symbols that have been introduced a year or 2 ago. They even have a separate area where you can leave your container deposit scheme bottles. And you have to touch everything to open it. So that's a design choice, but at least there's no one of those containers which are more likely to open just because I don't have to touch it. And here it's a mixed sorting versus residual waste. And then here's another example. That's a Swedish commune that has pretty easy color coding on here. It's the same bins. You don't have to make it all weird and colorful. They're relatively visible because they're all nicely arranged and you can see what is which fraction. One thing that they could have done differently here, in my opinion, is to put the one that I'm most likely to have, the residual waste, the mixed one, to the left, because we read from left to right. So the natural flow will always be from left to right. And in the worst case, I just go to the first bin, and that's usually one on the outsides. And then if it's on the left, then it's more likely that's going to be that one. But this is already pretty good. And then finally, we talked about the signage. And this is an example from San Francisco. where the city offers a sign maker online. So you can download their standard recycling signs, which has all these different pictograms, or you can log in. No, actually, you don't have to log in. You can just design your own sign based on what is actually relevant for your context. So for example, if you have a restaurant, and in this case, let's say you serve chicken and crabs and omelets, then this could be your compost sign that you use for your kitchen staff, if that is changing through, because then it makes very clear these are the items that go into this trash can, and it's not some weirdly huge overview of all the things that you could potentially throw into this can, but it is what matters for that specific context. Okay, a lot of stuff here. Oh, I have even more. Well, I'll just walk you through, and you'll get practice to it. I thought I was done with this. This is event examples. Okay, we have a really poor example in Sweden. So let's look at this. This says plastic packaging and mixed combustible waste. First of all, it's the same color. If I look at this from afar, I can see that that's the difference between those two. And then I look at the bins, and they both have the fire symbol. So is this going to be plastic waste now, or is this going to be combusted waste and burned up? Very unclear. Same here. Okay, here's a clear color coding: paper and combustible or mixed waste. These colors, again, they are not the Nordic standard symbols. God knows why they chose these colors. And we have a paper color in blue here underneath this paper. So it's, I don't know, there's a misalignment, and then there's a better example from Melbourne, where at least I have a clear differentiation between those two, and they even try to give you sort of a slogan and inform very clearly what is it that I do here. Keep it clean for recycling, not sure, bin it here. So if you're not sure that you can recycle it, then throw it into this trash can, because it's a safe choice. Again, here they could probably have switched them, because left to right is the order most commonly followed then. But anyhow, that's pretty good. Now, these are all bin examples. There are other examples of how you can use the context to give information to frame this. Here is a fun one. The challenge was that people left a lot of trash around or next to these underground bins. And the solution to that was to not make that impossible and put up signs, but to just sort of frame it differently. And here they used a nature framing with these artificial flowers and grass setup, which combined with the information on, okay, what do you do if you have bulky waste? You call here and you get it picked up for free. That was a very effective measure to avoid waste being left to these bins. So what I'm trying to say here is just to encourage you to work with the surroundings and the area around, and see if that can be helpful if you have limited ability to change the bin setup or layout. And then finally, this is an example I showed you at the beginning. This is a setup we tested for events at my bachelor's university, which is built on these principles. You have very different bins, right? They're different sizes, they're different designs, they're different materials, and they're all intended to give you an idea of what to throw where, including pretty clear signage, including this green carpet to design it like the Holy Grail, sort of. This is what you're supposed to look at. This worked quite well, except for the fact that we didn't look at specific challenges connected to specific products that might be served during this event. So what we saw that these single-use paper cups, they ended up both in the organic waste, because the event host told them this is disposable in the organic trash, but they also ended up in paper because they were made of paper. All of them should have ended up probably in the residual waste of the mixed one, because, you know, compostable and compostable, two different things. But here you can see how a specific sign that is adapted to the context, and here for the event, it could have been an option to check beforehand what is being served. We could have made sure that these end in a specific location, or we could have talked to the exhibitionist. No, that is not the right term, to the exhibitors, what they were serving. There were no exhibitionists at that event. All right, so this is visibility. This was all connected to visibility. Let's talk about location. The idea is you want to install these in natural pathways where people walk past. You never want to split fractions. It's very commonly done, but don't do it unless you absolutely have to do, because if you split fractions, meaning you have one bin here, mixed waste, and then over there, even if it's just a few meters, you have paper and plastic and whatnot, the chances that people sort correctly in either of these is very low. Chances are the residual waste bin will have everything, and so will the other fractions. So you don't want to do that. You want to double down or increase your capacity in some areas or during certain times. And then ideally you split it onto two sides, so you don't put, I mean, those are all like logical things, but I've seen it done wrongly so often that I want to make sure that that I present it here. And then cleanliness is paramount. You can deal with one or two pieces of litter that lie around somewhere, but if it's more than that, then it's going to lead to chaos, because then it will signal nobody does the right thing here. It doesn't matter if I do it, so I can just litter. So what does that look like? This is my university in Norway. The idea behind this single trash can is that people use a single-use cup, which shouldn't be here anyways, and then they dispose that here, right? Same as the idea behind this little bin in one very specific and one separated meeting room is only for mixed recycling. Of course, that doesn't work, right? Everything else ends up here because it's just one bin. Nobody goes with their trash to some other area. And the same here. If I'm in this room and I have trash, this is where it ends up. That just, you can't, like, people just, this is who they are. So it doesn't make sense. Just remove the bin. There's no, if people can take the trash into the room, chances are likely they can take it out if there is a good visible bin outside of that room. There's no need to split up 25 bins throughout the building or through into each of the rooms. This example is about positioning the bins in the right spot. You know the classic scenario, you're at a restroom, you wash your hands, you go get a paper towel, and then the bin for the paper towel is very far away from the door. So the only way you can use the door is, I don't know, with your foot or like with your arm if you don't want to touch the handle. Not super well done, right? So in this example, it looked actually a little different because they had a second bin here, which I really liked. So you could actually walk with your paper towel, walk through the door, open it with your paper towel, don't have to touch the door, and then dispose right there in the door and not try to sort of shoot it from a distance and still make that. So keep this in mind, and a good approach is to really walk through and think, put yourself into the position of the user who will do this later on. That's usually a good approach. I promise it won't be much longer, but we'll see. Now, these are things that you want to think about: visibility and location of the bins. Now, how do you work with this? How do you get there? How do you change these systems? It is extremely important that you work data-driven. You should start with a proper assessment of a baseline. Where are we currently? What are the issues? What does it look like? And then you can trial interventions before rolling anything out on the large scale. When you trial these and you pilot interventions or new waste systems, you can do it with the most simplistic version, like the minimum viable product. Think back to our paper cartons. I mean, those were paper cartons. There were no waste bins, and that showed us, okay, this works in general, but we have some issues with signage. So that was a completely no-cost approach to understanding what could work in reality and then being able to find a long-term solution. You want to keep it simple, also when you attach information, but you don't have to underestimate students or staff either. I mean, you're dealing with people who try to think for a living, sort of, and go into an educational field where they're required to understand things. So you can work with information that goes beyond throw it here, not there. If there is an item which doesn't make sense, then feel free to explain it and say, the paper bin, even if it says compostable, throw it here because it doesn't work with our composting system or something like this. At least give a reason why not. Otherwise, people will question it. They might decide that they have a different opinion on this. And you want to make sure that you get your staff on board. The emptying, the cleaning, the replacement of bin liners, that needs to be aligned. If you use color-coded liners and you have a yellow liner in a blue bin, immediately the whole system doesn't work. It's ruined. If people spot some of the cleaning staff and it looks like they're throwing different kinds of fractions into the same waste bin, immediately you're lost. So you want to avoid these pitfalls and make sure that that's clean. Now let's talk about resources, and then we're almost done with our run through of what to think about. Think about students as staff as your resource. They are there to deal with real world cases and to learn and to apply their knowledge in reality. You could connect waste challenges to various courses. You don't have to have a specific engineering or sustainability sciences course. This can be a communications challenge. How do I communicate this to students? How can I communicate this specific question to students? What is a good color to use here? It can be an ethnographical study. So you can have students who observe other students, understand how does this work? Where do people walk? Where would be a natural position to set up a waste bin? So use the resource. It's a great chance for students, and you don't have to do the work. I mean, see yourself as the provider of learning opportunities, because that is really who you are as operational managers, as logistical managers, as those who work with the working of the university. It can also be a great bachelor thesis topic. I mean, that gives people more time if you have a specific challenge to look on this. And again, yeah, your staff is your resource too. So they have knowledge on corners where things don't work out. They know what is usually a problem here, and you can work more targeted with this. And then finally, why did we talk about waste all this much? Like, why is it waste? Why not something else? Because waste, it's a very clear sustainability contribution. It is very easy to discuss, to showcase, to visualize to people your reduction and the behavior change. It is something people do every day, right? Each of us does that every day. You can change, you can implement solar panels and change how the energy is consumed and stuff. Most students won't ever notice, but everybody has to do with waste every day. So if you implement this and you can use this as a chance to really communicate what do we do here at the university, to really communicate your efforts. And also it's something where you will need to find a way to deal with this, because otherwise you have the issue of everybody does it every day. So they will just do whatever they think is best or easiest or whatnot. So you have to tackle it actively. It also is one of those wonderful sustainability areas which offers huge cost savings. It is, I mean, I don't know about your specific context and that may vary, but usually it is much more expensive to dispose mixed waste than recycling fractions. And that is money you can save right away. Maybe you need to review your contracts. Maybe there's a potential to change that and move away towards, or move away from sort of a flat rate fee for just having 8 bins that are emptied constantly, to really emptying 6 bins constantly, and to seeing how far you can get with this, because then you have an incentive to reduce the number of bins and to spend that money on interventions otherwise. So there, you can just, with the savings that you usually can have, power and finance a lot of interventions and activities around this. And as should have become clear already, waste has a huge potential to influence behaviors beyond this immediate waste context. This can really showcase how things are done here. This can make very visible that sustainability, that recycling, that resource reuse are important topics at our university. So this is a great chance to implement this, which leads me to the final point and closing, just to put this into the larger context. Waste and these measures, if you follow them, they give you a chance to improve sustainability and operations, but they also give you a chance to go beyond that. And this connects back to what we discussed in the morning. By making the campus visibly more sustainable and showcasing visible elements of this is how we do things here, this is what we find important, you can establish a culture of sustainability. Of course, it's relevant that this works, and that it, you can see that this is obviously something we're really trying to do. And it's not, well, we established the system now and we'll just see if people throw everything everywhere, we'll keep the system running, we'll just tell them we have it installed. That won't work. So you have to mean it. But if you mean it, then this has the chance to really make an impact. And then finally, these are 5 elements you should keep in mind. Think about your role as the staff that really deals with these challenges. This is sort of what society would be like without you, and this is who you are. You are represented by this person. You're the people who put trash in the pocket until they can't find a trash can, and we're the ones who keep society from rolling over. So this is my final hey yeah to the trash people. And with that and the much longer than planned presentation, I shall say toda rabah. That was still not correct. God damn it. Well, close enough.
It was correct last time and it's correct now. So thank you. Thank you so much, Henrik. That was actually very fascinating for me, at least. I learned a lot. I want to now give time for discussion or questions if anyone has something they would like to ask or say.
Perfect. There's a question. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, sure.
Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting presentation. And I want to ask you next question. How, according to your opinion, recycling waste can support improvement social and economic well-being well-being of students, of researchers, and another groups of population in campuses and beyond.
So if I got that correctly, how recycling and waste can improve the, what was it, social well-being? Is that what you said?
Yeah, of course. This is my question.
Well, I mean, through a bunch of ways, right? It makes your life cleaner. No, I mean, I think the core point here is this is a clear commitment to sustainability that you can show through these activities. It allows you to, or it allows your staff at the university to handle cleaner fractions, to behave in line with goals. I think it's a pain if you want to be sustainable, but you cannot because the infrastructure doesn't allow. Yeah, it just gives you opportunities for this. I'm not sure this is the perfect answer to your question. Maybe if you specify what you want to get at more specifically, then I'm happy to try again. I don't think this nailed it. Feel free to, yeah.
And any more questions? עוד יש לכם אולי שאלות שתרצו שאני אתרגם, או נושאים שהייתם רוצים התייחסות אליהם? דוד, אתה על מיוט.
Yes, I have a question. Hi. My question, as you mentioned, it's like the students that are in the university are really smart, like they're thinking, you know. In one case, we meet like last year. It's even in the university or even in the city, Tel Aviv city, you separate trash and bins and stuff. At the end, that's many people checked it. In the end, they still like melt all together and like send it to like, so people say, okay, they are blue and red and yellow, but they are making a joke of me. So I'm not, it's an emotional reaction. It's not even it's like a, you know, so maybe sometime when like everything is okay, they will show to the sunshine, but emotionally they know that it's not really separated. So if you're not doing the effort in the core issue, so it won't, I mean, help. Even though you try to make it more in the campus, people will more be aware, but people are super aware of sustainability and maybe too much aware. It's just that sometimes you use it in the wrong purpose. In the moment you do that, the tree trash, and people know that it's a fake, so it's already like, it's like horrible, I would say like public relation, because that's the worst public relation you can do, especially to like smart people that think, you know. I mean, even though it's a nice initiation.
I totally get your point. First of all, it's a common misperception, right? This is around the world, wherever you do this research and you talk to people, it's always it all gets thrown together, so it doesn't matter anyways. This is just show, and they just do this to make us feel good. And I mean, in some cases, that's probably true, and that is the case. I mean, there are enough contexts in which this happens, but not out of bad faith, but because the quality of each of those recycling fractions is so poor that you cannot recycle them, right? If I have so much contamination, then each bin essentially is the same in the end, and then it's becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Starting by they will throw it all together and mix it up. I don't sort correctly, and then the only way I can deal with this trash is to mix it up because it all is the same. But there, of course, is some truth in this. I would say in those contexts where we actually have this problem, where we have such poor quality that it's all mixed, we should probably resort to sticking with one mixed fraction, and then perhaps let that settle in, or find a way. We talked about the lids on these bins, right? Make very clear that the bins which are for recycling fractions have a lid, so they're less likely to be used, and then you have one mixed fraction. But you, of course, need to deliver some proof that something is happening with this trash and that it doesn't end up in the same location. So in the university context, this, of course, is a question of what do you communicate, and can you communicate that, yes, this waste that is collected in this fraction is actually sent to a different plant and used in a different process, or not. If you cannot, and it's not the case, then you shouldn't try to show that off. But in most cases, first of all, the mixing is not done because it's, I don't know, out of bad faith, as I said, or because that's what we want to do, but it's a matter of this is the only solution we have. And in most cases, it doesn't make any sense to mix waste together because, again, it's just a easy economic argument. It is more expensive to dispose of mixed waste than it is to have recycled fractions and clear recycling fractions. So there are cases, yes, where this is the practice, but it's not practice because that is how it should be done. But that is the only way how you can treat with it. And of course, that is a challenge you can't overcome, but you won't overcome it by not going there. So my recommendation would be to communicate this very clearly and not even let students think, oh, now they do this and then they dispose it this specific way, but actually communicate about this. Communicate also what goes wrong and say why certain fractions have been disposed as mixed waste because they were so poorly sorted. But only through that you can also show that, oh, indeed, we look at this and we try to make the right choice and make progress here.
Henrik, is it possible to ask a question as well?
Yes, Judy.
Sure.
Hi,
Introduce
thank
yourself.
you. So my name is Judy. I'm from Tel Aviv University. I'm the coordinator of the carbon neutrality program here. We actually have a very intensive challenge, I think. We don't pay for the trash, so it's not costly to not separate the trash according to their streams. And what I'm asking is, do you have any experiences with universities or places that are not actually paying for taking the trash in order to bring some other incentives or some other involvement besides the good behavior or the good citizenship? Is there a way to somehow give another incentives to behave properly?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, my first recommendation would always be change the framework and see to it that you pay more or that you receive money for properly recycled trash. I mean, maybe that's a different route. Maybe if you don't want to introduce extra costs for you, maybe you can introduce extra pay for you instead, and turn into that direction. But otherwise, I mean, the idea behind these infrastructural changes really is that it just becomes so plain, simply, stupidly simple that this is what you will end up doing anyways, irrespective of if you want it or not, because it just, that's just the easiest solution. Then you save this process of having to convince somebody of this. Otherwise, let me think, which context that we have to do that. I don't know. I think we overestimate the financial incentive. It's there for universities, yes, to introduce this. So you will have run into trouble maybe convincing admin staff or so to introduce these solutions, but not for the end user. I mean, no student cares about this anyways, right? This is, I'm sure you're also talking about this mid-level, right? It's about how to establish that in the university and how to make the business case for it, not about incentivizing.
I will need to invest a lot in those trash cans, in those different trash cans, and we do that, but there is no, the return on the investment is actually negative.
Yeah, I mean, then I would find some other way to connect it. I mean, connect it to university mission and showcase how you're undermining your other efforts by not having this installed, and how this is costing you credibility, and how this is not a way how you can host events if this is not introduced because people have been requesting this. I mean, find some group that gives you some leverage. That's how I would do it, or find some income stream from better sorted waste, and perhaps do it that way. Actually, it's a great challenge to give to students. I mean, there's a lot other or many smarter people than me, I think. And if that is a challenge for them, how can you make a business case out of it? That clearly is a nice entrepreneurial challenge that you could deal with, because there always is a business case for this. But somebody has an idea here, so let's hear from David.
I just said to Julie that I might have an idea, because she's right. I actually investigated the thing in Tel Aviv University, and if you don't have the economical benefit and the money wise, so why would the university do it? Why would the university pay for another employee to take care about it? And so we need to find new solutions that are economic, that are financial and business wise, I guess. So that I might have an idea. But I don't know if this is the place to introduce it and
let's take it
talk about it.
But follow-up question then on the situation. I mean, how is it with the other? I mean, how do you negotiate for the other climate actions that you do? I mean, that's our common challenge, right? Is it just easier to translate the other actions into CO2 savings, because then you can clearly do that here?
Yeah.
And then you might have to just argue through other routes if it's not the immediate cost savings. Then it's maybe about how many emissions avoided and how much material reused per shekel spent. That's the currency, right?
Yeah.
In Israel, I think one of the biggest problem in Israel is that the trash is dominated and controlled by a family of crime family, like big crime family that
Yeah, that's
that
not the issue. That's not the issue, David. I wouldn't
okay.
go into this. That's not a problem with how do we educate our population here at campus, how to separate trash and then how to handle it or even reduce it to
But what
begin
would
with.
it help you if the trash goes back to the mixture because no one care of it and the family of family of crime prefer to get the money from their businesses that is criminal. So you tell the students separate, but all the students, and in the moment the rumor it says that it's fake, a rumor of fake, that all of this is fake. So no one, like, it's all your effort will go to waste, to my opinion, from what I see. Maybe you will see some trash, but it's not the core solution that you want if you don't take care of the pollutant, of the trash, of the everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all in agreement that you can't just make up a story and then hope for the best and then sell that. It needs to make sense. It needs to be thought through. And I hope I made that clear that you shouldn't go for solutions which are obviously fake or don't hold up to critical questioning, because again, we're dealing with people who we train to ask critical questions. But in the same way we ask them these critical questions, we can also ask them to help us find solutions that work. So then if this is a challenge, this is a perfect challenge. And this is, there you go. Just bring it out and yeah.
I think that maybe it is a good point about, like, if in Israel, like the awareness to this topic isn't so high. So but bottle recycling, as David mentioned, that you can get the deposit back. So maybe if the university or the college collectively says all of the money that we will get back from these deposits, we will invest back into things that are helpful for a student, well-being and things like that, or other initiatives that students have a keen interest in donating to, then you can have only that separation. You don't have to go paper, plastic, aluminum foil, everything, and nothing gets sorted, but only the bottles, and have like the trash that has the shape of a bottle and everything like that. And also publicize that the money back from the deposit, because that is a policy that exists in Israel and that is real money, would be invested back into the students somehow. That's something that could be very, it sounds pretty simple, but it's something that could definitely, I think, work.
I would say that's a clear go-to if you don't do that. I mean, also it's sometimes you overthink these things, right? I mean, I'm not sure if you have separate collection at university established right now and it's not working out, or if you're still at the beginning of thinking, should we do that, or can we do it, or why would we do that? And then maybe it's a matter of simply trying out a solution which is simple and straightforward, and starting with that. But starting with something that makes sense, and if you attach an incentive, all the better. But usually you can also work around here, and then if it's not very common to practice this, but at least people subscribe to the norm that we think recycling is a good thing, then maybe you need to work with this norm. And you can reason that because we run a survey, see how many of the students think recycling is an important element, and work with this. That can also be your proof to say we need this because we're actively operating against our students. We have so and so many who do this, or we have an increasing number. I mean, find a frame that works and work with that, and then see where you end up. I would say that's at least worth a shot. And before you buy expensive bins, find some paper cartons.
I think
Try those.
in most places, as you've exampled, like for your bad examples, that the recycling bins are in a specific place in a specific area, and where bins are relevant, they aren't there necessarily. But I think a very good practice, which isn't necessarily, which is very easy to do and is not necessarily in most environments where there's a printer next to the printer, you have a recycling bin for paper. That makes sense because every time that you have a misprint or documents that you accidentally did this or that and you don't need them anymore, you just throw it over there. And these are always stacked. So to think about the consumption of different goods and how the bin is supposed to be right next to them, and you don't have nobody throws an apple in the bin next to the printing machine. That's something that would never happen. So
yeah,
try to think more
that's
logically.
a very good example,
and
actually. Yeah, I really like it, and it aligns with the reason is also why would you not use a separate container for your bottle if it is right there, if it's no effort for you? I mean, then it's obviously, if it's two containers and I know this bottle and I know this goes here because it's very visible, this is what it is for, there's absolutely zero additional effort. So if I can design it in this way, then you don't need to convince anybody to do it because it's just going to be simple. But of course, for types of ways that are more difficult, then that won't work. But again, I think it's a super interesting challenge and something to challenge the students with.
So,
are there more questions? Because I'm sure this can't be all the questions. There's 2 more minutes. Come on, people.
I think Yuval had a question. I don't know if I'm putting him on the spot.
No, actually, I don't have a question, but thank you for the lecture.
Sorry. Okay. So if there are no more questions, I'll give you a minute. There was the minute of reflection. I think it was something very interesting for everyone because we're not used to minutes of reflection during presentations. It's not a common practice
I
here.
recently tried to implement. It works with students because they get distracted every 20 minutes anyways, and then they start looking at their phone. So it's easier to give them a minute of reflection. Then they feel like, oh God, what am I supposed to do? And then they're right back.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and
I
also
thought it
really
was a
helps
social experiment to see how we behave.
No, but it's more difficult to be the one who initiates that minute because I didn't do a very good job at staying silent for 2 minutes either because it's a long time sitting here and waiting. So we're both learning still, but so
maybe
far
I can
the
just
response.
maybe I can just say something that seems obvious to me is just in universities and campuses you need to try to make people avoid from producing waste, and it's also part of the process. Of course, you made it very clear how you should design the trash cans and everything, but part of the thought, of course, should be to avoid in campaigns to reuse stuff and to bring your own cup and all of those stuff.
Yes.
But the rest was very clear, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you. It's a very, very, if I may respond just briefly, it's a very good comment and super relevant. And I didn't include it because in my experience, that's a whole other animal usually, and that's where we go in the second stage, or in most cases, that's where people want to go in the second stage. Although I would prefer if that's at least comes alongside with the other developments. And there, I think universities again, because they're sort of non-democratic institutions, you have a lot of power in a way. If you don't want to-go cups at this specific spot to be used for coffee, then don't allow it. It's going to be very difficult to stop you from that, or make it difficult to get these to-go cups, or make clear that most people don't want to use these, or whatever. But I mean, really just think through, and that's maybe my final reminder. Information campaigns are all great and stuff, but whatever is easy, think about it. Is this the easy solution? Is this something that if I don't necessarily have a very strong sustainability feeling and mindset, will I then stay away from using this to-go cup? And if the answer is no, then you have to find another way. Then information and education, isn't it? But there was another question that popped up here.
Stav.
Yes, hi. First of all, great presentation, great information. So thank you for reinforcing things that I know are right, but you helped me, put it together in my head again. And I was wondering about where you come from, if, deciding to completely eliminate the use of single-use plastic, single-use utensils, exactly to continue to go off what Yuval said, just to minimize the amount of trash we create on campus. Is it something common? How do universities go about it?
Yeah, I don't know any that does that. I wish there were, but I have not been in any context where this is a no-no. And even up here in Scandinavia, where we are supposedly all sustainable all the time, we have quite a lot of single-use specifically wooden cutlery and stuff like that in places where that wouldn't need to be used or there's no necessity for it. But we also see a lot of examples where it is changing. I don't know. No, I don't have any example where that really was fully abolished or stopped, but I know other examples where just showing through pilots that, so test implementations, that if you don't make these available, that you still sell the same amount, people are not all leaving, you don't have coffee cups at the other end of the campus all the time. Sometimes it is really about trying out and then being able to show. That's the only way I know, and then at least to make it a little more difficult or introduce some other barrier, or to remind using social norms, for example, at the point of sale, that this is really sort of, you know, intended as a last resort solution and not as your go-to. But if you want to do it properly, then of course you would just stop making that available. But I don't have any example where that is properly done, unfortunately. Yeah.
And they go to the compost in Scandinavia, or
also that depends a lot. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. In most cases nowadays they are okay and accepted because they're in line with the EU regulations on compostable goods, and then the most city municipalities that compost have aligned their composting practices to now be able to treat these. But I had a 2-year project during my bachelor specifically on the use of compostable plastic bags and how to get people to stop using them, because they just clog the machines, right? They don't work, they leave small particles and stuff. And there, of course, I think it's a ridiculous approach to start by thinking about now educating. And what we ended up doing, or in cooperation with one of the supermarkets in the city, that supermarket then printed an article about these bags and calling for people to not use them unless they use their own home composting, and had that next to their the bags in the store. So in the store, the supermarket became our partner to communicate to the citizens at the point of purchase that you shouldn't use these unless you use them for your own home composting, which is something the city could have never done. So, you know, you sometimes like think around the corner and then you see who can be a partner and how can we stop it. But sorry, I deflected a little bit from your question there in that answer, I realized, but anyhow, yeah. So ongoing challenges here as well, yes.
So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Henrik, and thank you very much for all the participants that joined today. We're going to have another session tomorrow on how students can actually make change on their campuses. So I really encourage all of you, whether you're students or whether you're not students and you want to engage with students and hear their thoughts and ideas, to join us tomorrow at 4 o'clock. It's the same Zoom link, Israel time. And again, thanks very much to our speaker, and we'll hopefully see you all tomorrow as well.
Thank you. Great
Thank
questions.
you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.